Good day and welcome. Today I'm going to be talking about The Blade Itself, a 2006 novel by Joe Abercrombie and the first book in the First Law series. Um, Probably won't really get into say a lot about this because it is considered sort of the father of the grimdark fiction genre, and it's a really effective book. Um, the characters are absolutely believable, although, the world is a pretty grim, terrible place and the people are flawed, but there's nothing in there that you see that's, you know, unbelievable. The story is well written. Joe Abercrombie is a very evocative writer. He's really good in, using dialogue to capture a sense of time and place. And his books are very well grounded in a particular time and place, so much so that I was reading um, his third trilogy set in a post industrial world. And I made it about halfway through the book and I couldn't read it anymore because I had read a lot of 19th century writing when I was in college and I really just can't stand it. And he did such a good job of evoking a 19th century post industrial revolution style that I couldn't read it. I like the story. I enjoy reading Joe Abercrombie, um, but he's just too good at evoking time and place. The Blade itself, obviously, as the father of the grimdark um, movement, is a fantasy-ish novel. It's set in a well, I really can't tell what time it's set in because it seems like it's more Napoleonic, so early 18th century, and then the follow-up books are post-industrial revolution, so that'd be late 19th century. So probably Napoleonic era, except there's no guns. So it's a fantasy world, but the governance and there's colonization that's happening in the books and so forth. That feels very early 18th century, but without guns. And it's anybody's guess what time it's actually set in. But it is a well-contained fantasy world um, that is fairly believable, even if most of the people are very flawed and very terrible people. The main book itself, I would call Logan Nine Fingers the protagonist of the book, although there are a lot of characters that contribute a lot. But when I read it, I like to follow Logan's story and treat the other characters as kind of serving his character arc. And I don't want to say I like Logan because he's a pretty terrible person. He served as the champion for the King of the North and went out and slaughtered people at his request. And Logan is very, very good at slaughtering people. So, not really someone you'd want to have over for dinner or so on, but as a character, he's interesting. And it's always one of the things he does that's interesting that I think distinguishes this from books that turn up the dial on the grimdark too much is you have the sense that Logan has this ethic that he's trying to follow and he's trying to do the right thing. Circumstances don't always allow him to do the right thing, and he's a very, very flawed person who, despite his occasional efforts to get his life on track, doesn't really succeed. um, One of the other things that I really have difficulties with is the character of Pharaoh, um, who's essentially her whole shtick is I'm going to be angry and stubborn and refuse to do anything, which I find like absolutely disinteresting. Um, when I've probably read the book 4 or 5 times now, and I'm getting to the point where the character irritates me so much that I'm just like it's hard for me to get through her parts of the book because as a character I find her extremely challenging. Um, and the various other characters are all interesting in their own ways. Um, I know Inquisitor Glocta is a favorite. He's an interesting character, and but overall there are a lot of characters. Again, this is kind of the founder of the grimdark genre, so it's not going to be a happy, light, fun book that's easy to read. It is a bit of a slog. The world is pretty terrible, but the author does periodically take his foot off the gas, and he gives characters an opportunity to enjoy successes. And to me, that makes it much more readable than a lot of the other grimdark books I find. Abercrombie really hits that middle ground between making the world grimdark without making it just like a completely, utterly horrible place. And not that the world of the First Law is a particularly nice place. And then there's other books I've read where they're putting in grimdark elements and trying to make it grimdark, but it's not convincing. And I don't know how I can explain about it, but there are books I've read where they're trying to be grimdark. I'm like, you're not convincing me that this is grimdark. And the First Law, walks down the middle of it. It's a grim, heavy book that's not easy to read, but it's readable. It doesn't completely overwhelm you, and it is a very, very convincing grimdark world. So overall, recommend the book. And if you've made it this far, I appreciate your time, and I will talk to you later.